you can get nervous and you can say, oh, someone screwed up. This person did that. Our approach is not who did what, is what happened. How did it happen? You always have to think about, the Spider-Man quote. You have power because you can do more or less whatever you want, but the point is that you cannot do whatever you want.
But ultimately, like you say, you've got some business owners. There is a kind of a fallback escalation point for, especially for the big stuff where more strategic decisions need to be made.
If I have a problem, I don't go to my boss because I don't have a boss. The core of how the business can work together is communication, is being open and trusting each other. It gives you a lot of autonomy and then also a lot of responsibility.
Have you got the trust, but it's kind of tricky to manage in a security context? Where does it fall?
We perform because the team has to deliver, and the organization will suffer if we do not deliver. And it's just like a natural sort of organic thing. So if you don't water your plants, they will die.
I'm really excited about today's conversation. I think we're going to cover a whole load of kind of themes around security, trust, communication in some pretty non-traditional organizations. And I'd love to get started by hearing a bit more about your background and journey into cybersecurity. I think it's been a pretty interesting path, shall we say? Maybe some physics, maybe some nanoscience even. So, how did that kind of transition from a kind of quite a scientific kind of background, land you in cybersecurity?
Oh, yeah. Well, yes, my career is definitely non-linear. I studied physics at uni in Italy, and then moved on to doing research in France, and studied nanotechnology as my postdoc. And then from France, I moved to the US, still doing research in nanoscience at the National Institute of Standard and Technology. So what happened is during my academic years, what I really learned was, to me, my strong suit is learning how to learn. So I had to solve problems, figure things out that nobody had figured out before, build things that did not exist. And I think that gave me a bit of a sort of head start regarding what has to do with, discovery and curiosity. I decided to move away from academia at some point, about 14, 15 years ago, I have to say, and also wanted to move closer to home. I'm from Italy, as I said, and I was working in the US, and like for family reasons, we had the opportunity to move to the UK, and I thought it was good for me to take a break from academia and work in the industry. And during my academic work, I started programming. You learn a programming language because you need to write your tools to do data analysis and whatnot. And I really liked it. So I said, okay, let's give it a shot, which I did. And I was hired, and I started a career in software engineering, the usual sort of agile companies, and I was working in GIS, Geographic Information Systems, and little by little, I went from just the software engineering side to building and deploying software. Now, you may imagine that when you build and deploy software, you want to be sure that you build the right thing. You have lots of dependencies. You don't introduce weird things that cause bugs and whatnot. So I started sort of being more interested into resilience, how you build things that last, how do you connect different pieces together. So in a way, naturally, I started to think more around systems problems rather than just programs.
Great. So those kind of transferable skills that you might not expect from the world of academia and science.
Yeah.
And an innate curiosity then, which of course is always useful in cybersecurity in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. Because from there, I went from building systems and thinking about complex systems. I moved over I also started change jobs, and I started working for companies that were working on distributed systems, so CDNs. There you have lots of computers in different parts of the world that talk to each other and talk to lots of other computers that you don't know who owns them. And you want to be sure that nobody takes advantage of that. So I was lucky in a way, because also the environment I was working in exposed me to the world of security. So when I was working in the CDN business, security was a big thing. And you would notice issues or potential problems, not just in the software that is built, but how you configure it and how you put it together and so on. From there, I sort of then got interested into cloud. Cloud became a thing, and I started working quite a lot with AWS. And then I had other experiences in between, working for startups. I worked for a startup that had to still deals with health data. So that's really important. So it's all about how do we protect that data.
Really potentially really sensitive information there about
exactly. Yeah. So how do we anonymize it and so on. So I was, again, naturally, it was a startup. I was employee number one. We were three, and I was the one who said, I know AWS, I can help set things up. And again, we started with the traditional old-style virtual machines, and then moved on to more sort of automated and serverless
microservices. And did that research background as well help? I'm assuming maybe some of your science background and in academia, there's certain characteristics you want in a data set and others that you don't, so that you can make sure that your analysis and your research is objective. Did that kind of similar sort of thing if you're doing larger scale health analytics and things like that, right? What information do we need? Does it need to be tied to an individual or not? I'm guessing there's a bit of prior knowledge there that was quite useful when it came to kind of
Well, that you can apply you don't really apply especially what I did which was very specific around nanoparticles and whatnot, but you want to apply the scientific and analytical method in general to the data that you deal with. It's for me, it's been useful, for example, for sizing a disk. So we had monitoring systems set up. Of course, when you monitor, you have logs that fill up your disk, and then you have to decide, okay, how large has the disk? How large do we want the disk to be? So that it has enough data, it doesn't cost us a fortune, we can go back in time, and so on. So you have to do something like that, and basically do a little bit of maths and figure out that kind of problem. With the health data, you speak with the health specialists and then say, okay, what is the data that you're interested in? What is the data that you are not interested in? Is it okay if we then substitute identifiable data with that sort of a fingerprint that is unique, like a hash? So that's where, for example, then started learning a bit more hashing things and encrypting. When you query a database, but the database is encrypted and it's decrypted on the fly, so that only the person who queries it knows what data looks like, and so on.
So a variety of quite kind of highly structured organizations and kind of quite small, like you say, really small team, handful of people, kind of agile startups and things. What sort of cultural or communication challenges stood out when you were kind of moving between those sorts of environments? Are there any kind of standout moments or things that you noticed the difference with?
Well, I would just like to go back a little bit just to say that then after that, I ended up at Mindera, which is the organization I work with, which is yet another type of organization different from even the startups. And here, my experience was built up, and I eventually ended up working for the security team on a kind of a full-fledged security role, and eventually I became team lead. But yeah, the differences can be quite stark. So I went from like mid-size organizations that are quite structured, but everybody fits in an office. So we're like about, 50 people. So you know everybody, but you still have the usual structure. You have the manager, you have the HR person, and so on. And then I went to much larger organizations. Although I would say something like the size of Google, so not tens of thousands of employees, but much larger organizations with offices across the world. So like small office in the UK, another office in Singapore, and another office in the US. So you had to learn how to work across cultural differences and time zones. But still quite traditional, as in you have your manager, you have your KPIs, you have your annual reviews and things like that. Startups are much less formal because you're just a bunch of people who want to quickly build something, and my job was let's build it quickly but securely. And there is a lot of flux, and you know each other very well. So it is very, very human and lots of close contact. No formalities, absolutely no formalities, and deep knowledge of everybody, just almost like friendship. Like it can become friendship, but of course it's a professional setting anyway.
Gotcha.
And and Mindera is yet another type of organization which started small, but now it's quite large. We are about 1,200 people across, I think, 4 continents, and 11 locations. And then our colleagues are spread across these locations, so they're not just in one city or in one office. I work remotely, as you can see from my background. And the way the Mindera founders decided to run the company was not the traditional way. So instead was using a self-organization model. So the way we work is
quite radically different to most organizations, right? I think, probably worth spending a minute or so explaining some of the differences then maybe between traditional hierarchies and kind of company functions and kind of how Mindera work.
Yes. So in a traditional hierarchy, you have the usual C-suite in an organization. You have CTO, COO, CISO, and so the bosses, and then you have the head of department, and then you have the departments, and you have the middle managers, and then you have the team leads and team managers. And basically it's like, I would say like clockwork. Everybody has a job, they do that thing. Everybody reports to someone else, and there is this vertical sort of flow of information that comes from the base, goes up to the executives. And it is regulated by very strict rules, right?
And I think Mindera is kind of at the other end of the spectrum, right? There's quite a lot of distributed responsibility and quite kind of almost extreme autonomy given to individuals, right?
Yeah, well, Mindera is not like that. Mindera uses this self-organizational model. You can look up Teal organizations, like the color Teal. And the idea is that each team is autonomous. So I'm intentionally saying autonomous and not independent. So we work aligned and to fulfill, Mindera's needs, the business needs. So we do have business owners who set the course, but they're not, absolute dictators in a way. That's not that kind of sense that they give. There are conversations. There is a lot of communication, and each team needs to work and talk and speak and interact with the other teams. Because if I have a problem, I don't go to my boss because I don't have a boss. I need to figure out who's the best person to talk to, contact them, speak with them, coordinate if there are actions that needs to be, carried out, and the kind of stuff. So really, the core of how the business can work together is communication, is being open and trusting each other, which is very interesting from an information security point of view.
I was going to say, bringing that back to it. So a lot of security and a lot of people's approaches is about those kind of policies or rules and conventions and kind of maybe a bit more kind of directorial of this is what you can and can't do. And I'm sure there's nothing, well, I know that in Mindera that doesn't stop you having policies and things like that, but how do you kind of, how do you think differently then again about that kind of personal responsibility and, without that kind of formal hierarchy, how do you ensure alignment and accountability when it comes to security decisions?
So I think that personal responsibility is a very strong feeling that each minder, each of my colleagues has, because when you're brought into the organization, it's made very clear this is how we work. And you can feel a bit disorientated, that there was for me 5 years ago. It's been 5 years I've been at Mindera this year. It's a bit of a culture shock because you are so free that you need to be very attentive with what you do, and there is communication. So yeah, we do have policies. We are aligned with ISO 27001. We are pursuing the certification actively. So we need to find the right fit for these frameworks, security frameworks, and a good, security approach with the way we work. So there is a lot of conversations. We do have, of course, technical tools and kinds of enforcement, but they are not all the time kind of imposed. Say, oh, we have this requirement, we do it, deal with it. It's more of a conversation, or that's what we try to do, of course.
Right. So more collaborative around kind of what are you trying to achieve, how do we get there, and those sorts of things.
Yes. Also, because the way Mindera offers tech services to clients, so we work, our teams work embedded with different clients. They have their infrastructure and their processes and so on. But then we also have to maintain an internal security, and then we have to meet our clients' requirements. So there is a lot of moving parts, which basically it's almost impossible for us to be like very hierarchical. Otherwise, nothing would move.
But I was going to say, it sounds like you can maybe the roles still exist, but it's less about the title and the hierarchy, right? So it's not kind of chaos and kind of anyone can do whatever they like. Everyone's clear on their responsibility and their role. It's just less about the kind of formal hierarchy and title. Is that a fair kind of summary there on how you guys approach it? Yes,
that's fair. So we do have roles. It's just that we're not attached to titles. So there is a role, and I fill that role. So I am the lead of the security team, and the lead of the security team, and it means that people recognize that my role is to coordinate security initiatives, communicate and speak with other parts of the business, talk about risk management, and so on. But it's not that I am the head of security, with the hat on and name tag, and then I go around telling people what to do. That's the way it's different. And so people come to me when they have doubts, say, hey, I have this doubt, or I have this question from a client, and then I can direct them to the rest of the team.
Do you think that kind of fundamental cultural difference, people are more engaged as a result of it than in a more traditionally hierarchical organization? Is there that kind of plurality of kind of asking around and kind of making sure that you've involved the right people that perhaps didn't exist in other organizations that were more traditional in their approach?
So for the right people, the answer is yes. And those are the people who tend to stick around at Mindera. Again, normally, if you feel comfortable in a given organization, you tend to stick around. There are people who feel very comfortable in traditional organizations where the responsibility level is relatively low, but then your autonomy is also low, and other people instead who want a high level of autonomy, but then also have a high level of responsibility. So yeah, I think that our colleagues do feel responsible for what happens and do come to us if they have issues or doubts. It's not about, sweeping stuff under the rug. Sometimes, people get scared. Oh, I have a problem with security. What am I going to do? They're gonna be, do something bad to me. And instead, most of the times, again, I don't claim that Mindera is a perfect organization. It has its own challenges most of the time.
I don't think there's such a thing, is there? Right, a perfect organization? I don't think it exists.
No, probably not. But yeah, but the point is that then we do have feedback, and we do have this, again, intense communication. Sometimes can be quite tiring because, again, we are 1,200, and I said that people come to me and I direct them, but they don't have to come to me necessarily. They know who the team is, team members are. They can go and talk to other team members, and that's perfectly fine, because then we have conversations within the team. We also have, of course, we use communication channels, and we have help desk channel where anybody can ask questions, and then we have public, as in public within the organization, conversations that then help everybody else figure out what to do. So if someone has a similar question, they can just search, and hopefully they'll find the answer.
Gotcha. Okay, so people are able. Presumably you've got a way for people to find and understand who the different roles and who the different teams are and that kind of stuff, so people can be proactive about engaging. And it sounds like there's quite a kind of quite a mature approach in terms of feedback and transparency and continual improvement as well, which is obviously a core part of things like ISO 27001, like NIST. A lot of these security frameworks are about identifying problems, and then how are you going to address those and improve and kind of learn from mistakes and issues and things like that to minimize the impact in the future. Sounds like that's quite a kind of well-established, probably not unique to security at all, but just across any function in Mindera, right?
Yes. Well, we do have this tenet of direct feedback. So what we do 99% of the times, unless there are exceptions, is, for example, on organizational level, since we don't have managers, if I have an issue, I can discuss it openly within the team or with the person that I have an issue with.
How do you resolve those kind of, if something's not going smoothly, traditionally you'd escalate it, right? You'd pass it up the tree and let the next level up kind of have a discussion and things. If you've removed those power dynamics and there's no boss in inverted commas, how do you handle disputes between teams and priorities and things like that?
I have to say, we never came to that, but there is always an escalation path if things become unwieldy, because we do have business owners, and business owners have the ultimate, decisional power. Mm-hmm. So if there is friction, we want to solve them. Everybody wants to solve the friction. So if I can't solve an issue, let's say again around security, then we involve the business owners, and we use risk-based approach, which is nothing. It's not rocket science and nothing new, nothing innovative, but is what we do because we think it's the right thing to do. And then we involve the business owner. We explain what the situations are, what are the risks. Potentially we do cost-benefit analysis. I'm talking about now high-level projects, not individual, of course. And that kind of those kinds of thoughts are discussed. When there are interpersonal issues, we do something similar in a way that then we can have mediation with other team members, or say I know another colleague who has a good relationship with the person I'm having an issue with, and then I can ask for advice to them. And again, if all that goes badly, then we have our procedures as organizations, for extreme cases.
Fairly kind of frank, open feedback, but because everyone's kind of on board with that as the way that you operate, it's more acceptable. And then maybe, if you need to get a bit of, you can informally kind of reach out to other people to help try and address or kind of reason around what the situation is. But ultimately, like you say, you've got some business owners. There is a kind of a fallback escalation point for, especially for the big stuff where more strategic decisions need to be made.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And yeah, we have the thing I think that is important that I think everybody understands. New starters are always informed, and we have active training sessions and workshops. Is this thing about direct feedback? So you have this psychological safety that honestly I've never found anywhere else in any other place where it worked, where I feel safe enough that I can go within the team and say clearly what I think is not working, or what I think needs to be improved, or I can go with speaking privately with a team member or another Mindera, another colleague, and discuss about something that might have happened. I don't know, a comment that was written, in the chat that maybe didn't come across in a nice way. Normally what you would do is, oh, that person, I really hate them because they wrote this and that. What we try and do is, hey, privately, look, you wrote that thing and I don't think it was nice, or the way I read it was this way, and why did you say that? And most of the time is, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you would read it that way.
Gotcha.
And and it works even in a large organization that is distributed. In my personal experience, it works. I had lots of interactions with this kind of feedback. It helped me improve personally. I hope that I helped other colleagues do the same around personal issues, but also security and how to deal with passwords or anything else.
Going to say, I suspect that kind of starting from a principle that there's kind of no ill intent behind what someone said, and like you say, that really high feeling of psychological safety, rather than being a security issue, can be a security strength instead. If you think in terms of kind of hierarchy of needs and things like that, people feeling safe is an important part of them, a foundational thing for them when they're at home or at work, right? And so if you've got that level of safety, if you feel that you're able to raise questions and queries and concerns candidly, then presumably that engenders quite a high level of trust. And does that also help embed those kind of stronger security practices, or does it, or is it more tricky? Have you got the trust, but it's kind of tricky to manage in a security context? Where does it fall?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it does have challenges, but I think in general, trust helps a lot. Because in my experience, what I've seen some organizations do around security, when there is a security team that feels quite on the edge. When there are issues, the security team are the ones in first line, and they need to deal with the problem. And you can get nervous, and you can say, oh, someone screwed up, or this person did that. Our approach is not who did what, is what happened, how did it happen? And this makes us as an organization trusting and feel safe, to the point that, again, if a developer thinks they made a mistake and misconfigured something, they come tell us. So we don't even need to wait for our monitoring system to say anything. Is that person says, oh my gosh, I think I made a mistake, this happened, is everything fine, what do we need to do? Or if we detect an issue, we are alerted of an issue, we just go there and say, we noticed this issue, is there something that has happened to your device or during your workflow? So we don't make it personal. There is always the insider threat, so you could always have a malicious individual, but most of the time, people just want to get things done. And at Mindera, it's really important. We say, this is your laptop, get things done. And they say, awesome, I can do, I can get things done, I can do my job. We want to keep it that way.
Gotcha. And sometimes, I suppose, in a traditional organization, that's where security can be seen as a blocker or a hurdle, right? Because it's kind of the emphasis is the same, get on and do your job. But ultimately, there has to be some level of control when it comes to kind of security. It's kind of in the name, right? You've got risks and controls and things like that, and try and increase the probabilities of having a successful outcome and minimize the risk of unmitigated surprise, shall we say. Do you find it easier or harder to communicate security priorities in a kind of Teal kind of self-organizing company? Is it easier or harder?
Okay, so it's a bit of both. As in, it is easier to communicate because you will explain what I don't know the situation is, or new regulation that comes in and new challenges that need to be overcome. It's easy, but it's also harder because, of course, then you have 1,200 people who will say, "Oh, but if you do this, I can't do this. If you do that, I can't do that." And considering that we have tens of clients, hundreds, many clients, then each with their different specific configuration and needs, then we need to be able to sort of harmonize the requirements so that everybody can get their job done. So yeah, it is easier to go around and have conversations, but then it is harder to, how do I say this? It is harder to get things implemented quickly because of this constant need of communication. If you have someone who makes a decision, you implement things quickly. They're done. You have blocked all USB ports on every device, finished. But then you find yourself with probably 500 people who can't do their job, and you didn't know why, because you didn't think about their use case.
And is that so you've got to work quite hard to stay visible and accessible and to understand those needs. How do you is there I'm guessing there's a balance, but kind of do you end up kind of more on the kind of like having to go slower and understand all of those needs, or is it kind of I'm guessing it probably depends is the answer, but like is there a flip side where it is like, well, we need to get on and do this, and I'm going to prioritize the needs of us as a security team and what my objective and my role is, on the basis that you will come and tell us if we've mucked up and made your life difficult, and then we can have that conversation. What's the kind of balance between how you and the team engage? Is it more kind of reactive or proactive, or kind of depends on the situation?
So it is always eventually a business decision. So the security team does not make decisions because we want to. If I were, from the security point of view, the best computer, the most secure computer is the one that does not run switched on. Absolutely zero security issues, right? But you need to work with it. And then if we just try and be a bit less silly, you will have a computer and then you have an MDM installed, an XDR, and people cannot run software as administrator. You have a strict block list of, or allow list of software that can be run and so on. You use, I don't know, remote desktop so that the sensitive work is carried out elsewhere in a secure enclave and so on. But then in practice, again, especially for Mindera, we can't do this in a standardized way. However, the business can make decisions. An example, we are certified with Cyber Essentials Plus, and Cyber Essentials Plus has very strict requirements around, for example, what kind of users or user count can be used on a device.
Yeah.
And it's very strict. The business decides that we work, and security works to make that happen, which is not, okay, now everybody has a standard user account and administrator accounts cannot be used anymore. No, is talk to our engineers and our colleagues. Software developers have strong needs to have administrative powers on the device sometimes to run tests or play with the network and so on. So how do we do that? Do we use virtualization? Does it work with your client? Does your client's workflow allow virtualization and so on? So it is complicated, but for a good reason. So we managed to get certification. We had to overcome some issues, but then we didn't have half of our engineers moaning that the security guys just did the next thing to make their life miserable. But of course, there are trade-offs, and we have to take them. But does not come from the security team.
Gotcha. In the security team itself, right? So you are the team lead, but from the sounds of it, you're not the line manager. You know, there's not that kind of approach. It's obviously really important to kind of there's in a traditional organization, there'd be lots around motivation, guiding, supporting team development, obviously kind of more of a pastoral kind of duty of care as well, especially we hear a lot about burnout and things in cybersecurity. How do you approach that kind of leadership and development of your team as a team lead, but not potentially as a line manager of the individual? How does that differ in Mindera?
So I don't do it because I have to. I do it because I want to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it doesn't have to be me. So pastoral care can come from any team member. If a team member is worried about another team member, they don't have to talk to me and say, "Oh, I'm worried about that person," or have concerns and so on. They can sort them out together. Potentially, I can help mediate. And from my point of view, also again around psychological safety, I would say I'm not anybody's boss, right? So we can talk together about what initiatives we need to carry out, who is going to lead an initiative. So the fact that my role, again, I fill in the role of team lead, maybe next year I will fill another role, a different role, right? Does not mean that I tell people what to do. And that makes the team much more engaged. So you don't have someone sitting at the back, like, yeah, okay, I'll just do this task, done. What is the next task? We have lots of problems, or we need to sort this thing out. How do we do it? And so there is a lot of engagement. There is a lot of participation.
So a lot more kind of leading through kind of shared achievement then as a whole team, and kind of that finding motivation in kind of succeeding as a team.
Yes. So what I personally try and do, because I think is very important, is giving credit where credit is due. So we work and operate as a team, but we recognize individual team members for what they do and the effort they put, or challenges they have. And so thinking about the line management, classical line management thing is, since we do not have individual KPIs, which is something that I always failed to understand, in a way, we perform because the team has to deliver, and the organization will suffer if we do not deliver. And it's just like a natural or sort of organic thing. So if you don't water your plants, they will die. I don't have to check the humidity level every day and ensure that the humidity is between 85 and 95%, just making this up. Maybe I could be scientific, but my plants will thrive, and maybe, I don't know, they will grow a bit faster or slower, but they will be happy plants. They will not be, tied with with a stick, so they're forced to grow in a specific way. Again, it's challenging, and I want to stress this: you need the right people on the team. Otherwise, things will not work.
And is there any so thinking about people joining a team, or kind of security, more junior security professionals, or people early in their career looking to move into there may be some people out there who say, "Oh wow, that sounds quite interesting, quite a departure from kind of what I'd thought a traditional organization and career path might look like." Any advice for people who are interested in kind of less traditional or those kind of Teal self-managed type organizations?
Yeah, so I can't remember, in general, I can't remember the website, but I think there's a website called Jobs with No Bosses, something like that. You can look up organizations. Mindera is listed there. But the point is, it gives you a lot of autonomy, and then also a lot of responsibility. You always have to think about, the Spider-Man quote, you have power because you can do more or less whatever you want, but the point is that you cannot do whatever you want. So it's really on you. You don't have someone who tells you what to do. At Mindera, nobody holds your hand. Maybe at the beginning a little bit to get you oriented, and then the team works together. But you don't have, someone who can say, yeah, I don't need to worry about this thing because my manager will sort it out. Oh, I have a problem with Robin, but I'll tell my manager, and then my manager will tell Robin. It doesn't work like that. If it's extreme and you really feel uncomfortable, of course, you can find mediation, but normally we don't do it. And then you can move, at Mindera, you can move horizontally, and you can change career as you wish. So around security, I can speak again for what we do at Mindera. Talk to us, engage with us. If you're interested, we can maybe collaborate and work on something together. If you have some spare time, we want your advice. We want other people's experiences.
Okay.
If you are a delivery lead, you know how to manage projects, and you can help us with something. Or if you are a developer, you work on some applications and you say, oh, I want to know more about OWASP. Do you have any resources and so on? And then maybe there is an opening at some point, and this person would say, you know what, I might try and join the security team. I learned these skills working with them, and then I can join them. And
within your team, as they are at the moment, do you have is there a high percentage of people that have made that kind of internal leap into the security team rather than recruiting externally?
At the moment, we are about 50-50. So we have people who have been recruited externally who are very good security experts, like 15, 20 years in security, working in GRC and security awareness, threat and detection. And they are, of course, subject matter experts, and they bring a lot of the traditional sort of security knowledge. But then we also have internal movements or people who have moved internally, not recently, but I moved internally 3 years ago. I wasn't doing a security-focused job for my clients, but I was on the platform team, so we were managing all the infrastructure. So I did do security by necessity, as I didn't have the security label, but I did find a couple of CVEs on our build systems and reported them and fixed issues with password leaks and things like that. And then I started collaborating with the security team, and then they had an opening, and then again I spoke with the business owners and said, I would be really interested. Can I leave the client and go to the security team? And they said, yeah, we can make it happen. It doesn't happen overnight, but they make it happen. And I have another colleague who used to be a front-end developer, and now he's a ISO 27001 lead implementer.
Gotcha. Cool. Sounds fascinating. So I think from what you were saying earlier, there can be a bit of a cultural shock, but something to be embraced, a bit of a mindset shift from kind of maybe thinking about kind of throwing things over the fence to another team to kind of thinking for yourself and being a bit more engaged in those kind of processes. But it's been fascinating hearing you talk about a very different way of approaching things. Quite a few similarities in kind of what I think people often say is really important. People talk about it's really important to break down silos and to communicate between teams, and feels like maybe that's something that you've got in spades over there in Mindera, rather than something that people are having to kind of force and think through. But it's been fascinating, Stefano, to hear a bit more about Mindera and that kind of was it Teal you said was the color, TEAL? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
that's correct.
A bit for people to go away and kind of have a think about and research afterwards. But fascinating to hear how security works in a more of that distributed kind of environment, and that you can still achieve certifications like Cyber Essentials Plus, and I think you're well on the way from what I understand about your 27001 journey as well, right?
Very close, yeah.
Oh well, I hope the internal audits and eventual certification audits go well, and maybe next time if you're back on in the future, you'll be able to tell us all about your successes on that front as well.
Sure.
Stefano, thank you ever so much for sharing your time today. Is there any last security tip or thing that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I think, to me, most important thing that I would like to say is always think about the human aspects of security. We are often very focused on technology, and we're very focused on solving problems the tech way. How do I do this? I can implement a control that does that. How do I do this? Oh, yes, I can lock everything. How do I do that? I can enforce 10-minute screen lock and so on. We think about the human component, because that is the part that is the hardest to work on, but is also the one, I think, to me, is the most fulfilling. Having colleagues telling us about, potential phishing emails coming in without any prompt, and just, conversations that we have. So we do have the training, of course, but then it's just, they know it's important. That is good. Having someone coming in saying, I clicked a link, I'm not sure I should have done it. That is something that is the human.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing to me.
Focusing on the human element to raise that engagement rather than kind of suppress it, I guess, is kind of where we're getting at. Once again, Stefano, thank you ever so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you. To everyone else that's listening, I hope you found that interesting as well. Thanks for joining us on another edition of Communicating Cyber.